Have you been looking for a new savings account because you heard that high yield savings accounts are where you should be keeping your money? Well, this video is for you. Today, we're going to talk about what a high yield savings account is and how you can pick the right account for you. Welcome to the Wealth Twins Show. Nicole, let's tell them what a high yield savings account is and let's jump right into it.
Well, a high yield savings account is really a savings account just like you would get, but it actually has a higher yield that it's giving you in terms of interest. So,
Mhm.
why do they call it a high yield? It's not giving you something like 10% or 20%. All it's doing is the savings account is paying you more than what the national average is. And when they say the national average, they really mean what the big banks are really paying you to put a savings account in their bank versus what you can get for, say, maybe an online bank. So if your bank is paying you more than the national average, then you're basically having a high yield savings account.
The good thing about high yield savings accounts is that they will at least try to beat inflation. If you keep your money in a traditional savings account, most likely you're not getting paid anywhere near inflation and you're definitely not beating it. Like if you look at the big banks right now, most of them are paying like Bank of America or Chase, they're paying 0.01% interest on your money. So
Yeah.
basically, you're loaning your money to them and they're paying you back 0.01%. And most of the time, they're going to make sure that you keep a minimum in that bank account too. So high yield savings accounts are where if you need your money and you need access to it quickly, you might as well make more money on that money while it's sitting there, especially if you're loaning it to a bank, which you're essentially doing when you keep it in a savings account. Now,
Yeah.
if you're looking to figure out which savings account or high yield savings account that you should pick, here's one suggestion I have. One, you should decide if you want a brick and mortar bank or you're looking specifically for online banks. Online banks would typically pay higher interest with a high yield savings account because they have a lot less expenses because they don't have to maintain those brick and mortar locations, right? But you have to ask yourself, am I a person who wants to deposit cash often and put cash into my savings account? If that is you, then you probably want to look more towards a brick and mortar bank. Now, there are brick and mortar banks that also have online banking features too. And they do have high yield accounts. One example that pops in my mind is Capital One. There are Capital One branches that you can walk into, but you can also do all your banking online through Capital One's platforms. So that's a good in between if you're looking for something that is online and has a brick and mortar location. Any suggestions, Nicole, on what else they could do to pick an account?
I mean, you also want to look in fees, and you want to compare them, right?
True.
Because if you look at the brick and mortar places, and typically these are the big banks, we're talking about Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they all have savings account, but they come with a lot of fees and some of them are hidden. One would be maintenance fee. A lot of these online banks that are actually offering you high yield savings accounts with a higher yield than what you would get at a brick and mortar bank don't come with as many fees. And fees are something you always have to be aware of because they're actually things that actually go against you when you're trying to protect your money and actually grow your money. So anytime you're giving your money to an institution, they're charging you high fees. That's something you should definitely be wary of and try to avoid if you can.
Nothing gets me mad more than you charging me fees on the money I'm putting for savings, right? I'm
Yeah.
trying to save that money. None of it, if I'm not spending it, why do you get to take it from me in fees? Like, that's not fair at all.
No.
Another, if you're looking at a high yield savings account, I think one way you should look at it and and you're trying to choose which one you want to go with and place your money into a bank, you have to look at the fine print, right? So when I say look at the fine print, a lot of these banks have higher rates that they publicize to entice new customers to come in and open up these high yield savings accounts, right? But when you look at the fine print, you'll see that introductory rate or that rate that they're publicizing right now might be only on the first couple of $100 that you put into that bank account, or they might require you to have a minimum deposit in order to receive that interest rate. So, for example, I've seen a couple of banks online that have 4.5% or higher than 4% interest that they're paying on these high yield savings account. But what they're doing is saying we're going to only pay that high yield interest rate on the first $500. Or in order to get that rate, you have to put in a minimum of $5,000. Okay. So read the fine print. Not every bank is the same. Make sure when you're comparing banks, don't just look at the rates. Look at what you have to do in order to get that rate.
I would say another thing you want to look for is the apps that they're using because, like I said, a lot of times the banks that are offering you a high yield savings account are going to be online.
Yeah.
So you want a way to not only access them through your computer, but also through your phone, which are our mini computers that we keep with us all the time. So I'm always looking at who has the best app in terms of usability. I can find things very quickly and really see the information I need to see very quickly. So definitely, if the bank does not have a great looking app, then that's something I'm kind of like, that could be a difference between which one I'm going to choose. And on top of that, customer service. I'm big into customer service. And if you can contact customer service and actually get a live representative, that is something I find very useful as well. So, those two things people need to really look at.
Yeah, I would agree with the mobile app. Is the mobile app easy to use, right? So that might make me pick between a bank that's paying 4% and one paying 3.9%. How easy can
Mm,
I move stuff around? And within that app, am I able to open up multiple accounts?
yeah.
Because I like using my savings accounts for different reasons, right? So if you give me the ability to open up multiple high yield savings accounts, that's great because now I can park money in different places for different uses and I'm making a higher interest on that money. If I can open that without having to call a representative or walk into a brick and mortar location, that is great because now you're giving me the flexibility at the same time paying me a higher interest rate. So look for that too when you're looking for a bank to open up a high yield savings account.
I think another thing that I like is when you can also open up a checking account with them. Now, we're not looking to get interest on a checking account,
Yeah.
but if you can have your checking account and your savings account at the same institution and you can easily move money back and forth between the two, that is something that's convenience. It's something that I'm willing to look for, or not willing to look for. That's something I would like when I'm parking my money someplace. That is definitely something I look for and I actually appreciate. Not only because I'm able to move money back and forth between my checking and savings account, but also because that checking account will come with a debit card. And if I'm able to move money back and forth between those accounts and then have that debit card on me that I can use at multiple locations to actually take out the money, that is something I really appreciate. And I think there's something that you look for when you're going for a high yield savings account. You want to see if they have a checking account option that also includes no fees and no minimums, and that you can pair it with your savings account.
No, I agree. You want to have the flexibility to have check writing ability at the same time, have a savings account there. But if you got to understand yourself, if you're the kind of person who gets a debit card and the money starts burning a hole in your pocket and you're kind of defeating the purpose of having a savings account because you're linking your checking account to it to get a debit card, then maybe that's not for you. Then maybe a bank that you have your checking account separate from your savings account might be a
Yeah.
better deal for you. Okay. I don't think some people can deal with the convenience like that, but if you can, that's a good option that you should look for.
I mean,
Now,
you should look at it this way. It's a savings account, okay?
that's
So
true.
you're meant to save money. It's not your spending account. Please, if you're going to use a high yield savings account and you want to get the benefits of a higher yield, then you have to put the money in and you have to keep it in there. So like Nadia was saying, if it tempts you to have your checking account and your savings account and have that easy access to the savings account, and you're kind of defeating the purpose if you start taking the money out. So if you know that and you know that it can be a little bit of a temptation, then yes, maybe you should separate your checking from your savings and make it a little inconvenient for yourself.
Now, when I'm looking at these high yield savings account rates that they're paying right now, I think on average, like I've seen 3.90 to all the way to like almost 6%, right?
Mm.
I don't understand why people are looking at CDs right now. CDs are paying kind of the same amount. Like
They're
I think I've
close to
seen,
it, yeah.
yeah, but you got a 12-month CD at like 4% or 3.9. Why am I locking my money up for 12 months in a CD when I can get paid the same amount in a high yield savings account and not have to go through any penalties if I need to move that money out quickly? So when it comes to getting a high yield savings account versus you trying to park your money in a CDs, I think it's a good conversation or a good investigation that you should be doing on your end, saying, is it worth me putting my money in a CD right now when they have high yield savings accounts, paying basically the same rate or more?
You know, you're bringing back to my mind when you first talked about inflation, because let's talk about another account that you might want to choose between that and the high yield savings account. That's a
Okay.
brokerage account. Now, for me, a high yield savings account is really only for short term saving purposes, right?
True.
I'm
True.
talking about your emergency fund, maybe any money that you have that you know you're going to have to spend in maybe 1 to 2 years, maybe a down payment for a house, where you want to have access to your money, but you also want to protect it and make sure that that money stays at where you actually put it in. But if that is not the case and it's actually more on top of that, more than $250,000, because that's where FDIC can insure it right now, then you don't need to put all that money into a high yield savings account. I think a better account would be a brokerage account for that, because that is longer term money that we can actually get a higher rate in terms of interest if we're doing some investments, which would help you beat inflation. Definitely more so than a high yield savings account. But yeah, there's risk in investing that money. But if you can wait long enough, you can try to ride out the waves of the market. But in the long run, it tends to be that the market will give you a higher return than putting your money in any type of savings account there is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Now, I want to put it to the audience. If you guys have had a high yield savings account or you had a savings account, which one you think is better for you? And if you currently have a high yield savings account, what do you like about it? And try to give people some advice that made you choose that account. Let's help each other out in the comments below.
Like, I want to know how many of you didn't hear about a high yield savings account. You thought that all savings accounts were the same.
Yeah.
Right? Now you know there's something else, which is a savings account. That means that it's insured. It means that you won't lose your money, but yet you can have more interest on your money by just putting it in a different types of account. And on top of that, you might not even be charged fees for having that certain type of account. How many of you didn't know that these type of savings account actually existed? That's what I'm more interested in learning
Yeah.
about.
My thing is this: how is it possible these bigger banks like Chase, Bank of America, probably Citibank too, how are they getting away by still giving people 0.01 or 0.04% on their money while they're taking that and loaning that money out and making a way bigger amount in interest on the money they're loaning out? They're probably loaning at 7% or higher. And you're getting paid nothing and they're using your money to make money on it. I don't know how they're still getting away with it,
I
but
can tell. It's called access to information. And that's exactly why we create this channel, right?
exactly.
Our job is to make sure that we give out the information that we know and share with as many people as we possibly can. So these things don't have to happen. That you don't have to know, you don't have to not know what you don't know.
I
That's
agree.
what we're trying to do here. We're trying to teach you and tell you about things that you may not even know that actually exist. So that's why we create this channel. So, and that's what our job is, try to close that gap as much as possible.
Exactly. So stop giving these big banks your money for free and get paid for it. And if you like what you learned in this channel and you want to learn more things like that about things you may not be familiar with when it comes to financial literacy or how to manage your money, then make sure you join our newsletter called the Wealth Pack. It's free to join, and the link is in the description below.
And as always, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share it with someone you care about. Until the next video, we'll see you.
We'll see you in the next video.